All right, we are back once again with Level Up Grappling Podcast. Coach Brian here, straight out of PCI Jiu-Jitsu Mission Viejo, California. And once again, we have an all Aussie episode, well, outside of myself. So, of course, we have catch wrestling legend Adam Tibbetts here. And I got a funny story for you guys. And today we have a grappling legend from down under. If you are in Australia, you know who this man is because he is renowned. If you're not, yeah, you should. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of trouble. Adam will find you.
And hunt you down and kill you.
Exactly. So today we have a wrestling legend from Australia, Ken the Dazzler Dunlop. Ken, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you. So you have a long storied history in the world of grappling, particularly in Australia. So I was wondering if we could start at the beginning with your story. How did you get into wrestling? What inspired you and how did you get onto the circuit? So tell us from the beginning.
Okay. When we were in Australia, World Championship Wrestling was huge from 1964 to 1978. So from the age of 4, my whole family were huge wrestling fans. And we used to sit around the TV and watch wrestling together as a family. It was our Sunday lunch. We'd always have a roast lunch and sit down in front of the TV and watch the wrestling. And we lived in the country area. So they used to come up to the country areas every, say, 2 months. And we'd always go to a show. So from the age of 7 or 8, I always said, I want to be a wrestler. And then when I was about 10, we moved down to Melbourne in the city area. And Festival Hall was the main place in Australia for wrestling. They had wrestling every Saturday night from the first Saturday of February right through till the second Saturday in December. So Mum and I would go every single Saturday night because, as I said, Mum was just a huge fan. And, of course, when you go all the time, you get to meet some of the local wrestlers. And I got to meet 3 or 4 and their wives and their families. And when I was 16, they invited me to go to a wrestling school. So I took up the chance and, yeah, started training at 16, had my first match at 17, and my final match just before my 40th birthday.
Wow.
Big career. Now, Ken, that school that you went to, that would be MB's, was it? In North Melbourne there?
MB, Melbourne, yeah.
Yeah, nice. And who were the guys that were training there again? Schneider and...
There was John Snyder, Sam Rossi, Jim DeMiros, Fred Berger, and Casey Miller. So they had a really good mix of all different styles. Like Fred Berger was a European. He was from Austria, so he had a different style. And Jimmy was, again, different style. John was harder. So it was a really good mix. Casey was the sort of the roughhouse man of the bunch.
Yeah. So he would be more the shooter guy who knew the actual submission holds and stuff like that, you'd say?
Yeah, and he was pretty rough and tough. Like if I did something wrong, he'd kick me up the arse, smack me around the back of the head, yell at me and swear at me, and you'd think, whoa. So you learn pretty quick to do the right way because if you did it wrong, you're going to get punished.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And I mean, you whilst you were in Melbourne, you also went to Mario and George's gym, and everybody who's watches the podcast knows that Mario was my coach with the shooter style stuff. That was in Franklin Street near the big market.
Yeah, I wanted to learn as many styles as possible and train with as many people as possible. And Mario Milano, of course, is a living legend in Australia. And George Gurliovis was more of an amateur wrestler, and he didn't sort of really succeed that well into the professional market. But it was different training altogether with them. It was, more mat wrestling, especially with George. He'd make you bridge for like 35, 40 minutes at a time. But again, it was more like the ground mat wrestling, so it was a little bit different to the MB. So I was doing both gyms at the same time. Again, it's just trying to train with as many people and soak up as much information as I could.
Which is really cool. my introduction to Mario was through my amateur wrestling too, and all the mat wrestling and stuff like that. And that's how I actually transitioned to learning the shooter style, the old pro submission holds and stuff like that, which wasn't around in freestyle. So
No, it
that
wasn't
was
there.
really interesting that Mario and George were really emphasising the mat sort of wrestling and the holds and stuff, because I know when Mario was showing me, he's like, yeah, your freestyle's great, but you're not going to hurt anybody with it. You know, so his whole thing was pressure or pain, hold him or hurt him, mate. But he would say it in his good accent, yes.
That's so cool. That's interesting. How would you describe the wrestling workouts that you had while you were training at the school?
Okay, it started off always like a 2-hour session. It was always 2 hours, and we'd do at least the first half hour of break falls. So with every style of break fall, we do at least 30 of each, including getting off the top rope and doing a forward break fall, then doing a back flip off the top rope, and we have to do like at least 30 of everything. So, and then you do all your basics, like your hammer locks, figure four, arm locks, hip throws, all your arm drags, all your basic stuff, full Nelson, half Nelsons. I don't know if anyone today knows what a half Nelson is. You never see
Nope.
it. But
No, they
so
don't.
we do that for another half hour. And then the last hour was always wrestling. So the guy I was training with, the young guy, Rob Magris, we'd train for 15 minutes, and I'd wrestle Casey for 15, I'd wrestle Sam for 15. We used to have Sam and Casey on Tuesday nights, then Jimmy and John on Friday nights. So, sorry, Thursday night. So, yeah, so you get to train 15 minutes with each of them. And then I train with guys like there's a guy called Fat Dominic who's probably 5 foot high and 5 foot wide. So, but again, it was just a different style. I couldn't do much high spots with him because he was a big man. Johnny Doyle, there's a few other guys I trained with the ladies, Paddy Ryan and Cherry Sinatra. So it was just such a good mix of training with everybody different.
You know, one of the things I think the misnomers that kind of still to this day exist out there is that when you are in a wrestling ring and you're on the mat, that it doesn't hurt and that it's a soft cushion, which I know for a
It's
fact
not.
it is not.
It is
So
not. No.
what happens is people see the explosion or the hit, or they see when people are taking the bumps, you know, there's give. But I was wondering if you could explain to the audience, number one, it's not a cushion. It doesn't feel well. Even the ropes, when you hit the ropes, it's not cushy. You
Oh
know, you
no.
have to build your body to endure that type of physical abuse. So I was wondering if you could explain to us what it exactly feels like, because I know there's quite a snap to it.
Yeah. Well, every ring is different,
Mhm.
but you've got your solid steel frame. Of course, in the centre of the ring, you've got the big solid pipe to hold the ring together. But then it's just 18 mil ply or 3/4 inch ply,
Mhm.
and then all it is carpet underlay. So normally it's only about say 10 mil, which is 3/8 of an inch thick, and then your canvas. So that's pretty much it. There is spring in the wrestling ring where that's not so much in the boxing ring,
Mhm.
but it's not that big a difference. Some rings you get into, like there's a ring in Sydney at the Horden Pavilion where they used to do a lot of their big shows. That is like a slab of concrete, absolutely hard as a rock. There's no give at all. So you take your first pump and you it brings tears to your eyes. It's so hard. Some rings are softer and most rings are the same because in Sydney we had a lot of regulations you had to hold up to because in Sydney, New South Wales, wrestling up until 2000 was run by the Department of Sport through the government. So you
Mhm.
had to have a lot of certain things ticked off all the time. Where in Victoria, Melbourne, they didn't have any control, that there was no commission in charge, so they could do whatever they like. But in New South Wales, it was pretty well run, I think, and I think that needs to be taken over by the government in all states. The safety of the wrestlers, safety of the fans. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
Because also
And then
being run by the government, they force us to have comprehensive insurance for the wrestlers. So, like whenever I started promoting in 91 to 98, we always had a full insurance. So, and also the insurance to protect the fans, but also every wrestler was protected. Where in Victoria, if you got hurt, the promoter would say, just go to the hospital and bad luck. Where at least in Sydney, you're covered by the insurance.
That'd be really important, because a lot of these guys over the years haven't had insurance. And you hear these horror stories. I remember a guy that was really big in the 70s here in the United States, a guy named Superstar Billy Graham. He would talk about all the injuries he had and the hospitalizations and everything. And he was always paying for everything out of pocket. I mean,
Yeah,
it's crazy. You hear these
it's really
stories.
sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
My younger brother, he wrestled in Melbourne for over 20 years. His name's Alan, but he wrestled as Red Hot Ricky Diamond. And in one of his last matches, I can't remember the year now, but it would have been mid to late 2000s, he wrecked his shoulder. Now, the promoter just, again, sent him off in a taxi to the hospital. And because he didn't have private health cover, he had to go on a waiting list for the operation. And you wouldn't believe it, he only had the operation last year.
Oh my
And he was
God.
on the waiting list for over 6 or 7 years before he had his shoulder done. And the promoter didn't contact him for months to check on him. I told him to sue him, but he wouldn't do it. So, yeah. But he
I
was
mean,
in
look,
pain
I
all
think,
that time. He still had a full-time job. But, yeah, just wrong. So wrong.
yeah, I think that's standard procedure for promoters across the board, regardless of combat sport. I think everybody who's fought for somebody who's promoted has been in that situation themselves. I think, but it seems to be more prolific in the wrestling, I think, than most.
Well, I go to local shows now, and I went to one of the promotions about 3 years ago, and they actually get guys to sign waivers now beforehand to say they won't sue the promotion if they get hurt, bad luck. And
Wow.
when I heard him talk about it, I was just staggered. I thought that's disgusting.
Yeah, and all for your $50 a throw.
Yeah, and so they get less money now than I was paying in the 90s. That's when I just really like every job in the world like goes up every year. Wrestling's gone down in Australia.
I mean, but how is that possible? Because it seems like they're making more money than ever, the companies.
The trouble, I think, today, it's all door deals. That's the biggest problem. And because of the way wrestling's changed, instead of having, say, 4 matches, now they're putting on 6 or 7, 8 matches on a card. So you've got so many guys. Like the other day I went to a show, they had a 6-man tag as the first match. Then they had 7 more matches after that.
Yeah.
So that's over 20 wrestlers on a card. They had 2 referees, and then you got your ring announcer. So that's 23 wages you've got to pay.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. So if you're only getting in 300 people, that's not going to cover that wage, plus putting up and down the ring, plus your insurance. I mean, they're losing money. So when we used to always just have 3 singles and a tag, and when I promoted in the 90s, our money was guaranteed by the clubs. Now, that changed in 2000 and that went off the market. So no one gets guaranteed money anymore. You only take what's through the door. So that's where it's a big change. Melbourne's always been that way, and they've always coped. And there's a huge boom at the moment. Like I think in Sydney this weekend, there's 5 shows in Sydney on Saturday. and in Melbourne there's 3 on Saturday night. So it's there's a lot of work. But again,
Yeah.
if guys are doing it for $20, $50, to me, it's just not worth it.
No.
No.
It's such abuse on your body, and it's just like, what's the point? Like, for what for are they doing? You know.
I mean, I
It's
get
incredible.
it's a love of the sport and a love of the industry and stuff, but I mean, it's got to come a point where you got to have a bit of love for yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Unless,
self-respect.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, look,
Unless you
I
have
can't
like,
really talk. I've actually fought a kickboxing fight for a pizza. So,
hey, look, I did that too back in the
yeah,
day.
I got paid pizza in the dressing room. That was it. And I never got paid by the
There,
promoter again.
oh yeah, there was, you know, because in California back in the day, mixed martial arts was not legal. So we had two things. You could do kickboxing, which I did, and then you could do pancration, which is basically open-handed strikes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about all you could do. And we had these matches called smokers. They were just at these gyms where you can go sign up. You don't know who you're fighting until the day of. You know, most of the time they're not even in a quote unquote weight class. This is like, hey, do you want to fight this guy? Okay. Doesn't matter if he's 300 pounds or 200 pounds, or whatever. You're just fighting whoever's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time I had gone to another state for a tournament, and I had won the tournament, and the prize was $300. And like, oh, hey, you made all this money. I go, no, you got to understand how much it cost me to get out there. So all in, it cost me over $800. You know, it was probably close to $1,000, everything. So even after my $300 prize, I was probably negative about $700.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, why am I doing this to myself? It doesn't make any sense. I'm not a superstar. I'm just some crazy kid that just wants to fight people because, you know, I've got an issue.
That's one thing. When I was wrestling and promoting, if we did shows in Sydney, this is going back to the 80s, like I was getting $100 a match. If we went, say, more than 90 minutes away from home, it'd be 150 a match. And they'd have to supply your hotel for the night as well. That's
Mm-hmm.
how Sydney was run. And even when I promoted, that's how we ran. And anything more than 90 minutes, we supplied accommodation. And also, if I've got one guy to drive 3 other guys with him, I'd give him $50 extra for petrol. Where again in Victoria, that was different. You had to get your own way there, your own way back at your own cost. And today it's the same. Like there was a show last weekend in Parks, which is about 3.5, 4 hour drive from Sydney. The guys have to drive up there, wrestle for $50 and drive home. They would lose money, as you said. Like to get up there and back, you'd need 2 tanks of petrol. So at least
Mm-hmm.
$60. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not safe to drive back. So if you're staying at a hotel for the night, you're doing that at your own expense.
Mm.
So again, it's the whole thing's changed and it's not for the better.
Indeed.
That's crazy. Now, I'm curious, how did you guys meet?
I reached out to Ken on Facebook. Actually,
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'd known Ken's name through the Wrestling Hall of Fame and stuff, and um, like I said, I was never a pro wrestler. I'm not about
Mm-hmm.
pro wrestling. I don't claim to be. I've trained with a bunch of pro wrestlers, the younger generation guys, and they literally got me to teach them how to wrestle, which was kind of funny. You know, when you think about it, wrestlers learning how to wrestle in order to stand out from other wrestlers. That's what I was told. We
Yeah.
want to learn to wrestle so we can stand out from the other wrestlers. And I
Yeah.
thought that's a really interesting concept. But look, all great guys and all that sort of stuff. Love the business, but I was looking for somebody to talk to about the older school style wrestling, where Ken's from. And Ken's known as in Australia, as I say, as a bit of a legend around the traps. And I knew
Mm-hmm.
of Ken. I'd never met Ken. As I say, I wasn't in that business to know Ken. I trained with Mario specifically, mostly wholly and solely with Mario. That was because, as Ken mentioned about Festival Hall, my father knew Mario from Festival Hall. He was a wrestler. My dad was a boxer, all that sort of stuff. So they knew each other and was more family friends. And sort of Mario knew my dad, and so I'd get dragged along when he'd go to visit Mario at gyms and call in and say hello. And Mario knew I was an amateur wrestler, started showing me how to actually hurt people with wrestling. And that's how that escalated into learning the shooter style of wrestling. So all these guys have pretty much passed on now. I sort of knew that like one of the top guys for shooters in Australia was Roy Heffernan. Yeah, he was known, he's the godfather of Australian wrestling. He's trained with, correct me if I'm wrong here with anything, Ken, but he trained with Stu Hart in the dungeon over there in Canada. And, you know, so there's that link there. And Ken trained with Roy. And so it was a really interesting concept for me to reach out to Ken and have a chat. And we started talking and got along like a house on fire because Ken's like me, a bit of a no bullshit sort of bloke, and we tell it like it is. And we had some good yarns about wrestling and all that sort of stuff. And Mario in the old days in Melbourne, because we're both originally from Victoria. And it just sort of progressed from there. And now we've become good buddies. And Ken's the patron of Death Roll Gym, which we're really proud of. And we're trying to, at Death Roll, we're trying to keep the legacy of guys like Ken and Mario and Roy and those legends of that sort of sport that really knew how to wrestle back in the day. Before it was a stunt show, before it was about jumping off the top rope and doing 10 backflips through a table, these guys knew how to put a hurt on you. And so we reached out to Ken and we've got along ever since. And if I've got a question or I need to know something, Ken's who I ask. So if everybody asks me about grappling, well, I ask someone too. And Ken's the man I ask.
That's awesome.
Plus, I bought out a book, which I forgot to mention the other day, Dazzler Dunlop, Inside My Squared Circle. And Adam got my book and had a good read. It's got a lot of tales and stories about the times and how hard and tough it was back in those days. Again, like Adam mentioned, Roy Heffernan. Roy was obviously one half of the Fabulous Kangaroos, probably the greatest tag team in history of wrestling all around the world, not just in Australia. They wrestled in America and they were top headlines. I've got some plaques here, which I can't get right now, but they were given to Roy. One of them was 1957, so before I was born. He was Wrestler of the Year, and that was given to him by Vince McMahon Sr.
Wow.
And then in 1957 again, they broke a record at Madison Square Garden because they used to do shows monthly. And they actually had to do an extra show, so they did a fortnight apart to get the crowd, and they had a capacity crowd. It's on the plaque. It actually says how much the crowd was, the gate takings for the night. So that was incredible stuff from Roy. And he told me that when him and Al Costello were in New York, they used to run up the stairs of the Empire State Building every day, 3 or 4 times, as part of their training.
No, that's conditioning.
He also said, back in the day, you had to go and do all these little country shows, he called them shit shows. You drive 150 miles to do a show with, say, 50 people, and you get $20. If you didn't do those shows, you wouldn't get the Saturday night show, which was your big payday. You might get $300. And this is going back to the 50s, mind you. So they still had to go and do all these little country shows Monday right through to Friday for $20, $30. And he said it would take, you'd lose money because your petrol costs, your food. They'd always stay at YMCAs if they could, because they were cheaper. And then they'd just travel around like that. And Roy lived in a caravan park as his base, but he said he was hardly ever home.
Wow. Now,
and he said that's the sort of legacy that you're talking about in Australia that we're trying to preserve. Guys like that, I mean, again, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of Roy's pride and joys was that he wrestled Lou Thez a number of times.
I was just going to ask, had Roy ever met or associated with Lou Thez?
Yes, I've actually got a wrestling poster, which I'll send you if you like, of the main event is Roy against Lou Thez. And Roy's very last match in America, I forget where they were, but they had to get a ferry to some island to do a show. And because it was Roy's last night, he said, hit me in 15 minutes so we can get the last ferry back. And Lou said, no, as a as a thank you for your friendship and all that sort of stuff, do an hour Broadway. so Roy missed the ferry, of course. So they did an hour Broadway, and then Lou gave Roy his boots. They had a little hole at
Wow.
the end, and Roy got them bronze when he came home, and they're still around. His daughter got them when Roy passed, but now can't think of the guy's name. Yeah, a wrestling fan. His father was Waddy Ayoub.
Mhm.
Just can't think of his name, but he's got a lot of stuff of Roy's. So he's got the boots. I've got Roy's original kangaroo flag, which Roy handmade in 1957. I've still got that, which I keep very, very proudly. But speaking of Lou Thez as well, I got to speak to Lou Thez 3 times at Roy's house, which was, again, fantastic. And Lou Thez sent me a signed copy of his book, which I've got, and I still hold that with pride.
Mhm.
So it was just fantastic talking to him.
Wow, that
Yeah,
must have
nice.
been pretty amazing.
Amazing.
Did Roy ever know Carl Gotch?
Yes, they trained together, yes.
Okay.
When I was we used to train with Roy on a Saturday morning, and then we'd go back to Roy's house. His wife Joyce would cook us all a nice little lunch, and then we'd sit around for the next 5 hours, and Roy would tell us all stories. And occasionally, he'd just get the phone book out. I got to speak to people like Fritz von Erich, Stu Hart,
Wow.
Giant Bubba in Japan, JJ Dillon in America. Like
Oh my God.
Roy would just ring up and he'd say, "G'day, you fat bastard! It's Roy from Australia." And he'd have a
Love
chat and he'd just pass the phone over to me and I'd be going, "Oh, hello."
Wow. You know, I'll tell you something interesting, Ken. So a while back, this was maybe a month or two ago, there's these Facebook groups. I try not to pay attention, but I'm an admin in one of them, like about catch wrestling and stuff. And there were some guys that they really don't have any experience, but they like to chat anyways. This guy says, "Well, I never saw any submission grappling matches on YouTube with Carl Gotch, so maybe Carl Gotch was a fraud." And I, I was just scratching my head. I'm like, how could you say something just so ignorant? I'm like, number one, he was an Olympian, and then some guy says, "Well, he was an Olympian from Belgium, so it doesn't count. Any college wrestler could beat him." I'm like, what are you talking about? Just like just
I hope you
nonsense
slapped
stuff.
him.
Yeah. Well, fortunately for him, it was just on the internet, so I can't reach through the
Yeah,
wires to grab him. But it's like I don't think they would realize that without people like Carl Gotch and Lou Thez and of course Billy Robinson, there really wouldn't be any modern MMA today because they were the ones that taught all the guys in Japan.
yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't even have Japanese pro wrestling as it evolved without them.
Well, I remember Roy was known as a bit of a shooter as well, and he said a
Mhm.
few times promoters would bring him in to bring somebody down. So he didn't say a lot of names of that sort of thing, but yeah, he'd get a call from a promoter. Would he come in for 3 weeks? We've got this guy on top. He he's come out of control, and Roy would come in and work a little angle, do a match with him, and screw him to
Wow.
bring the guy down. So yeah,
The original
Interesting.
Mad Enforcer.
yeah.
Mm.
But
That's
Billy Robinson was the same. There were certain guys, and Carl Gotch, all those guys, they were all brought in to bring people down.
Yeah.
yeah. It's interesting. I fortunately got to train with Billy for like 7 years. But of course, when you're training with Billy, it would only be like he'd be doing these wrestling camps in the U.S., but it was
Yeah,
like maybe 2 times a year. But nevertheless, it was incredibly influential in terms of how he guided my grappling. Because at the time, like when I was just doing jujitsu, I felt like Billy his guidance was really what made me accelerate from blue belt to purple belt. So my coach, Chris Howder, my jiu-jitsu coach, I was literally a white belt for 5 years and a blue belt for 5 years. So it took me to go from white to purple to 10 years. You'll hear people say, oh, I went from white to black in 10 years or 8 years or whatever. I was held for, 10 years. But I will say this. After one camp with Billy Robinson, so we would do these Saturday, Sunday camps all day, Saturday, Sunday. In less than a month after the first camp, I got my purple belt. Oh. And I really owe that to Billy, because Billy showed me the details I was missing. And really kind of gave me more of a vision of how to wrestle the jiu-jitsu guys in a way to like really be more, a little bit more precise with my violence, so to speak, and not isolate. Like, I'll say it like this. There's a lot of amazing jiu-jitsu guys. There's a lot of amazing wrestlers. But you'll get guys that were wrestlers that went into mixed martial arts and then also went into jiu-jitsu, but they compartmentalize their wrestling where they don't merge it with their jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, hey, you can blend it all together. And that was really the foundation of what became my school, what I started for my own style, PCI Jiu-Jitsu. PCI was Billy. That was pin, control, isolate. He would always say, pin the closest joint, control the surrounding area, isolate for a 2-on-1. So that was Billy's vision. It was his philosophy. And I always looked at what I'm doing as a hybrid grappling system, because to me, I look at it, I want to incorporate everything that works. Anything and everything that works, I want to incorporate it. And if it doesn't work, or if it's only somewhat effective, I want to throw it out. So when I'm on the mat wrestling or rolling, whatever you want to call it, or even with my students, people go, why do they look so different? Why do they feel so different? Because we don't keep things in my style, that is ineffective, or it's going to be marginally effective. And that was really something, that was an idea I took from Billy. I mean, because even the stuff that I learned from Billy, there's a lot of stuff I didn't use. Because I was like, well, that's not really going to work for me in a fighting perspective. Yeah, it could work in, more with show holds and stuff like that. But I was very focused on what can be efficient and replicatable over and over and over again with a wide body of people. Not just like a big man move, or this is a small man's move, something that everybody could do, and then when you start to think that way, you really kind of narrow down what you're going to be using.
Yeah.
But I was really
professional in a way. Like, you have to, big guys, small guys, you have to all learn the basics. One thing I've found with big guys, they've got the lazy attitude. They've got the big man attitude. They don't feel they have to do as much wrestling because of their size. And to me, that's absolute crap and lazy. Where if they can do a flying drop kick and all that sort of stuff, looks sensational. You look at guys like Big Vader. He can get on the top rope, and he was a big man, do backflip moonsaults. Mm-hmm. Now I think he was one of the first guys that size to do it. So then it made all the other big guys have to work their asses off so much harder. But again, for some reason, it's sort of stopped. A lot of them, to me, are lazy, big guys.
A lot of lazy guys.
I think for me, what I see, Ken, and I mean, you would know better than me being in the pro wrestling scene, a lot of the modern wrestlers, and I use the analogy of that guy who asked me to teach him to wrestle to make him stand out from other wrestlers. It's more about the show now as opposed to the wrestling, and when you got a big guy, if he can do one real move that makes the crowd go, wow, that's where he'll leave it.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that would instigate that laziness. I've got to stop a move. That's all I need.
Yeah. You still got to have all your basics. And
of
again,
course,
if you're doing again, today they only do like 8-minute matches. That'll be the average, I'd say. Again, back in my day, it was like 25, 30-minute matches mostly. So those guys, if they do have that attitude, they're going to struggle to do 25, 30 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Like sometimes they might have their 8-minute matches planned, but if something goes wrong or someone doesn't turn up at the last minute, the promoter says to these guys, instead of doing 8 minutes, you've got to do 16 minutes. Half these guys wouldn't have a clue what to do. They'd be stuffed, because they plan every single second of every match. And I couldn't do it mentally. I just couldn't do it. We used to do a quick start, a spot each in the middle, and the finish. You call the rest as it comes. And I guess that's all from learning the basics and learning all your holds, your counter holds. And that's what they're not being taught today. They're not taught all the holds, counter holds. They're not taught basic routines. So they've got no idea how to fill a match. That's the big problem, I think, today.
And I
Do
guess
you
that's
ever
where
see a time-
we come in with holds.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
we
Do you
come
ever
in
see
to
a-
try and preserve those.
Yes. Absolutely. But do you ever see a time where people will eventually get back to mat wrestling, more focus of mat wrestling, or do you think that's long gone?
I don't think they've got the attention span anymore for it. That's the trouble. Like I said, when I go to the shows, I like to sit at the back of the hall and I like to watch, I watch the matches, I watch the crowd, their reactions. I try to talk to as many people as I can just to get all their opinions, and I talk to as many wrestlers as I can. Because they always come to the back and have a chat. And there's so many, like even in an 8-minute match, there's so many dead spots, and the crowd are absolutely dead. And you think if the crowd were dead, like when I was wrestling, the promoter would kick our asses. You've got to engage the crowd all the time and work to the crowd. And sometimes you can just do 5 minutes without even doing a match or a hold. I mean, as long as you've got the crowd, that's it. And half the people today are scared to look at the crowd. They just like do their little bit of stuff here, but they don't care about there. And that's what they should be, because they're the ones paying their wages. They're the ones paying the money. If you haven't got them, you haven't got the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know for
think
me, sorry, Brian,
No, go ahead.
with Mario, he would always explain to me that a hold, why is it called a hold? Because it's a hold in the action. Yeah. It literally keeps someone under control. If it's a shoot, I can keep someone under control to get my breath. Or if it's a work and it's part of the business, that's where we talk about what's happening next. Yeah, it's literally a hold. Hence it was called a hold. He said, think of it like that. I'm holding someone, I'm controlling them. I can either hurt them, pressure or pain, or we can work out what's going on next in this match. And I think that really made sense to me with the whole pressure or pain, hold them or hurt them type situation. So it's interesting that they don't do that anymore, because I imagine, Ken, you would probably be better qualified to say this than me, but I imagine if some of these guys knew a couple of submission holds or something that they could put on, you would negate a lot of those dead spots.
Definitely. If you can, so even if you're having a rest hold, you work it so it looks painful, as you said, it looks real. You don't just sit there and hold it. You work it all the time. Like a chin lock from behind, you're doing your deep breathing through your nose to get your breath. But you can actually squeeze the guy's head. You can move his neck around. If you're doing all those movements, the people are seeing you doing it. They understand and they know you're working the guy down. If the guys today just hold it and don't do anything, it looks crap.
Yeah.
And again, they're not
Absolutely.
selling the hold. That's the biggest thing I noticed with today's wrestling. And I still love watching wrestling. I get the adrenaline. I still sort of get caught up by it all. But they don't sell. I mean, they'll get on the top rope, do a backflip somersault, land on the guy. He nips up out of one and nips up and does a drop kick. I mean, someone who's 80 or 90 kilos has just landed on you from the top rope. you're not selling it at all. You're just nipping up and doing something straight away.
Yeah.
For me, it's so frustrating. I sit there and I just, it's so frustrating.
The Hogan effect.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
I
that speaks to,
hate
you
Hulk Hogan. Hate him.
I don't know many people who like him who can actually wrestle.
He couldn't wrestle his way out of a wet paper bag.
No, he could not.
yes, they also. Yeah. You know,
When he worked in Japan, he had to work harder. But in America, they again lazy, absolutely lazy.
Yeah.
when I was a kid, you know, he was like probably the most popular wrestler when I was growing up. But I was one of those kids, and I was on the minority side that I always just wanted him to lose because I had such a deep appreciation for the actual real mat wrestlers, the guys that were real technicians that actually could wrestle. That I was like, there's no way this guy's going to lose to Hulk Hogan. I'm like, he's got to lose. I go, this just sucks. I go, I would be so upset, you know, because he would just be shaking and everything and clapping, and then the audience be going wild. And he did his horrible
Come
leg
on,
drop.
Brian, you were a Hulkamaniac. You know you were.
Oh God, I was not. The funny thing was, the funny thing was, is he lived in my neighborhood when I was a kid.
Oh.
Where I grew up in Los Angeles. He out in the San Fernando Valley, he lived in my neighborhood. And we'd see him all the time riding his motorcycle around. And one time, I don't know how old I was, maybe I was like 9 or 10 years old. I was at the sporting goods store with my mother, and who's in there looking for a treadmill is Hulk Hogan. And they're like, oh, sorry, we don't have any treadmills here. Maybe you can try some other store. We don't really know where to go. And he was like really upset. And she's like, I know where to go. I'm going to go get Hulk. I'm going to tell him where to go. So now my mother's was maybe at the time 5'2", not a big lady. And Hogan was huge. So my mom chases him outside, and we were leaving. And she's like, hey, Hulk, come here. And Hogan just stops in the middle of the parking lot. He's like, yeah. And she's like, she grabs him. She's like, I know where to get the treadmill. Let me tell you where to get the treadmill. And she's giving Hulk Hogan directions. She's trying to tell him, you're going to go down this street. You're going to go to the store. I know where the store is. I know the people at the store. Go over there, and this is where you're going to get your treadmill. And he was like, oh, okay, thank you very much. She's like, okay, now you got to take a picture with my son. I was just like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Because I'm thinking in my head, I hate this guy. I mean, I'm in awe because it's Hulk Hogan. But at the same time, it's like, I'm thinking in my head, I wish you lose your next match. You know, because I was just like, that intensity of like, I don't like Hulk Hogan. So I remember my mom had this like a instant camera in her car. And she took the picture, but then when it got developed, it was all warped. So it was all blacked out and warped, so you couldn't see the picture well. But I'll never forget that, getting to meet Hulk Hogan in person and everything, thinking just in the back of my mind, I really hope you lose your next match, because I couldn't stand him as a wrestler. But as an icon, to see him in person and shake his giant hand and everything, and having my mom, this little woman, telling Hulk Hogan what to do, was really, it was a comedy scene, man. It was really fun. But yeah, it was.
Well, it's funny. My mum, as she was a massive wrestling fan, she got to meet obviously all the guys. She loved Mario Milano, and Mario was so nice to her. Like, took some photos with her, and he had a couple of pizza shops not far from our area. So one time I took Mum and Dad to the pizza shop to meet him, and we sat down, and he used to call them Mrs. Ken and Mr. Ken. Even my parents, that was how we called him. Hello, Mrs. Ken, and so, but he never made him pay. He always gave it to him for free, and they went 2 or 3 times over the next couple of years afterwards, and he always remembered who they were. It was always really nice. And even just before my mother passed away, I took her to a wrestling show. She was in a wheelchair, and as I said, she was very close to death at that stage, but My younger brother was wrestling in Melbourne, so I took him along,
Mhm.
and I asked him to go and speak to her, and he didn't recognise her because she'd lost, as it all weight. She was, as a, very close to death, but he went over there and gave her a big hug, and put his arm around her and made her absolute day. So he was a legend, but she got to meet all the main guys, and so she was tickle pink, and everyone knew her as Mrs. Ken.
Mrs. Ken. That's so cute. So
And
what was it?
I toured with Andre the Giant, Don Morocco, the Cuban Assassin, Killer Khan, the
Wow.
Young Bloods. She didn't get to meet Andre, but she met most of the others. But she didn't. Yeah, she didn't meet Andre. But I got to tour with all those guys, and fantastic. Cyclone Negro, and he
Mhm.
was such a massive, massive heel. But honestly, one of the nicest guys in the world you could ever meet. He was such a gentleman. Um, Spiros Arion, who was huge in the States as well. I met him. He was okay. He was nice. He wasn't that friendly, but he was nice. But so just to meet all these people like that, Andre the Giant, you shake hands with him, and Killer Khan, Killer Khan was this big, massive heel on TV, and when you get to meet him in person, again, nice, friendly guy.
What was it like touring with Andre the Giant? That must have been very interesting.
Fantastic. It's so funny. Like as I said, we did some country shows with him as well. One was in Newcastle, which is about a 90-minute drive from Sydney. We had a minibus and we had to take out one row of seats so he can fit in properly. We all pulled into the local service station to get a snack, and all the boys got like a hamburger and chips and a can of Coke. Andre
Mhm.
got 3 barbecue chooks, a whole loaf of bread buttered, and a 2 litre of Coke. And that was just a little snack for him. So, and on the way back, he had a flagon of wine. So that's, I think, a gallon or 5 litres,
Oh my
and
God.
a full case of 24 cans of beer. And same with Don
Wow.
Morocco, he had 2 cartons of beer, and they were just drinking, throwing them out the window. And I actually leaned over and tapped Don on the shoulder and said, "Look, Don, you're not allowed to throw cans out the window here in Australia. It's against the law." And he just said,
Mhm.
"Who's going to stop us?" I thought, "Oh, fair enough." Then we
Yeah,
got back to King's Cross, which is a real, it's sort of a rough sort of area. It's where all the prostitutes and drag queens, and it's
mhm.
it's one of the areas in Sydney where the nightlife goes till 6 or 7 a.m. all the
Wow.
time. And the hotel they were staying at, the Texas Tavern, was there. And when we got back, it would have been midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning. Andre wanted to walk around, so here we are walking around King's Cross with him at 1 o'clock in the morning, and everyone knew him. Everyone, "Oh, take a photo, take a photo." And he was so nice to everyone. He never said no to anybody. He stopped with everyone, took photos. Again, we went and had a little bit of food, walked around, and it was just sensational time.
It's sad to me to think like with Andre, the life that he led, he was always an object of attention for everyone. It was hard for him
Yeah,
to just
yeah,
be a person because he was just so massive, and people don't realize, nowadays, if they didn't know Andre the Giant or, from back then, just number one, what a big star he was, but what a massively large human being he was.
yeah,
You know, he truly was larger than life. It was, I remember seeing him in person, him walking right past me, and how little my dad, who was an athlete, who was a college football player, just how tiny he was compared to Andre the
yeah.
Giant.
And
It
he
was
was
unreal.
such a lovely man, friendly. Like I said, we toured for, I think it was 6 or 7 days. He never forgot my name. Every night we'd come in, he'd go, "Hello, Kenny." And every night you shake his hand. And so he never forgot your name. And so that, to me, that was special. It was really important. And just to sort of, again, sit there and I'd try and talk to him as much as possible. His accent was very strong. and he'd sit there and he'd tell a joke, but no one would understand what he was talking about because of his accent. But then at the end, he'd bang his hand on the table and start laughing, so everyone just laughed.
That's cute. Yeah, that's now, did you ever get a chance to meet Jimmy Snuka?
No, I wouldn't want to. I used to like watching him, but when I've learned about what he's done, and yeah, I've got no interest in him or no respect for him whatsoever.
Yeah, that was interesting. Just how he, and I wonder if some of that behavior over the years came from the CTE, like head injuries.
Oh, it definitely would have been, but also the drugs. That's what stuffed him up. I mean,
Mm,
he, I often wonder, like all his crazy that dive off the top of the cage. Could
yeah.
he do that if he wasn't snorting cocaine before the match?
Oh, probably
And
not.
that's
You'd have
what
to
sort
be
of
out of
sticks
your
in my
mind.
head.
Yeah, you'd have to be out of your mind
Yeah,
to do the stuff that he do. That superfly swat off the top of the cage. I remember, what was it, against Don Morocco?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Um,
insane. You'd have to be out of your mind to do something like that.
but the things in here, one thing I've loved watching all those Dark Side of the Rings where they expose and tell
Yeah,
supposedly the truth about everybody, how open people are about their drugs, and
yeah.
that really shocked me and it disgusted me actually. Um, there was one of the guys was openly talking about how if anyone wanted anything, he was the one to come to. And he was one of the major baby faces for the WE. I won't name him just in case, but um, yeah, I thought, well, I used to like the guy, and I used to meet the guy when he came out here, but he was jokingly like, oh, if anyone wanted coke, I'd have it. I'd have this, I'd have that. They'd come to me and I'd give it to them, and he's boasting and laughing about it. And I think that's to me tragically sad and disgusting. You know,
Yeah, it's very,
I mean,
very sad.
the promoters would have known what was going on. They should have stamped their foot down and said, no, no drugs, whatever. But that's how it was. But yeah, watching these documentaries on these things, and when those guys admit what they've done and all the cocaine, and you don't feel sorry for them, you only have sympathy for them. And look, I lost all total respect for Snooker, and the same with Sabu. I didn't like Sabu, even though he's only recently passed. I respect his wrestling ability, but as a person, he was the same. Another one, massive drug use, and
The
there
hardest
was
one.
never a there was never drug issues in Australia that I know of that I
Mm,
saw. Only when the Yanks come out, you'd see some stuff then, and I saw quite a few guys taking pills. But in Australia, the only thing here back in the earlier days was drinking alcohol.
mm-hmm.
Um, Especially in my early days in the 70s and early 80s, guys would be sitting in the dressing room smoking cigars and drinking whiskey or beer before the match. But after about 84, 85, that all stopped. Because we had one of the guys here died in the ring. Well, he died in the dressing
Wow.
room. But he was wrestling a guy who was drunk at the time. They went to do a bridge, like a suplex into a bridge, and the guy banged the back of his head because the drunk guy lost his balance.
Oh my God.
And he banged his head that hard, and he knew something was wrong, and he said to the referee, "Finish straight away." So I went into there, finished, bang, walked into the dressing room, sat on the chair, and dropped dead.
Oh
So
my
that was a
God.
massive, massive court case. That went for about 5 years, the court case. Now that changed
Wow.
wrestling and changed it in a way for the good. After that, there was
Yeah.
no booze. No one was allowed to drink. No smoking, of course. That law changed a long time ago. Um, so it was so different. If any of the guys when I was promoting, if anyone
Mhm.
came smelling of alcohol to me, I don't care who they were, off the show. I would not let them perform. If they didn't do what I told them to do, off the show, get out. I didn't give a shit if it was a major star or it was a minor star. They were my rules. I set up And I told everything, even if they came to the show, they had to be reasonably dressed. They couldn't just come in shorts, flip flops, and a singlet. They had to be dressed decently. They had to respect the crowd, heel or babyface. If the crowd talked to you, you talk to them. Don't ever disrespect them. And again, Sydney was run by the government, so they weren't allowed to swear. We had to be careful with what we did and all that sort of stuff. So um, I believe in all that, especially the alcohol, the drugs, all that part of wrestling in America then was absolutely disgusting, and it makes me ashamed of the wrestling for that period in that sense.
I wonder if it was just because it was just out there. You know, in the 70s and 80s in the United States, the drugs were everywhere. It was just commonplace. So if you were any form of sports or entertainment, everybody was doing it. You know, it wasn't, I don't think anybody really considered it as that serious or that bad. I think it really took time until all these guys started dropping like flies.
But I
You
bet you
know,
people
where,
like Billy Robinson, I bet they didn't do drugs.
oh, no, 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 no. I know he
Roy
was a
Heffernan never
drinker.
did drugs. Yeah,
Yeah,
Roy Heffernan was a drinker as well, but yeah, never drugs. Like they respected the business and they respected
yeah.
themselves, and that's what is lacking.
You know, the hardest one for me, Ken, and I to this day I cannot watch the documentary on it, was Chris Benoit.
Yeah,
I can't watch it
yeah.
because I was so heartbroken and just disgusted by what happened with him and his
Well, he
family
had
and everything.
CTE, didn't he? Didn't they
Yeah,
do a brain? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
that's one
It
thing.
was so severe.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
one
so
thing
severe.
I'm
Yeah,
concerned about CTE because, like, I had, I think, 14 to 16 concussions
oh my
during
god.
my career, and I've got really bad short-term memory issues, and I've basically I've had probably 3 episodes where I've just blacked out.
Yeah,
Only for 2 or 3 seconds. Um, once at home, I just fell, and again, you know you're falling, but I couldn't grab out. My leg wouldn't move, my arms wouldn't move, and
yeah,
it's all from all the head knocks.
yeah,
Um, I see a neurologist every year. There was a program on TV here about CTE with boxers and football players, rugby league, AFL players. And I contacted the professor who was running the research, and I said, "What about wrestling?" And he said, "I've never thought about wrestlers." So I actually signed up as a volunteer. So I'm a guinea
oh nice.
pig for when they do new trials. I go in once a year and get all the tests done. One of them is a 4-hour memory test, which is absolutely kills you. It's terrible. Um, and I have an MRI of the brain every 2 years just to keep a check because I know I'm going to get Alzheimer's or dementia. And like I'm 65 this year, so
Mm.
probably in the next 10 years I'll develop that. But if I get on top of it, keep getting it checked all the time, at least I'm aware of it. And
Yeah.
that's the scary thing on with which is not was not recognised back in the day. But even when I was
Well,
promoting again from 91 onwards,
mhm.
we had to have wrestlers had to have medicals every 3 months here in Australia or in Sydney. That was the
So who's
law at the
frozen?
time.
Smart.
If anyone, when I was promoting, if they had a concussion, I'd make them sit out for 2 weeks. This is before it became the standard, and I would make them go to their local GP and get a medical clearance. So that way, the doctor's giving me his guarantee that the guy's safe, and that way it protected me as well. But I never had an issue, thank God. But yeah, I was very careful with that, even way back then. But that's one thing that does really concern me. CTE is a huge thing, and most of the sports don't want nothing to do with it. They try to ignore it and get away with it. They don't want to be
Mhm.
controlled.
It's scary. It's very scary. I'm hoping that, you know, with the new technology that's come out and peptide therapy, I know a lot of people are using peptide therapy to heal their CTE and different things of this sort. I really hope that, in the future, maybe that won't happen to you. There's a good chance it won't happen to you because of what availability we have now with different technologies. So let's cross our fingers that it doesn't happen. I don't want it either. I've had 4 concussions.
Yeah.
That's what made me stop fighting. I was just like, okay, I'm not going to do it. And then I have multiple herniated discs in my neck, and my hands shake and stuff like that. So I'm very careful with what I do. But I think people take a lot of unnecessary risks.
I've got nerve damage in my neck as well.
Yep.
And twice the last 2 years, I've had to get cortisone injections in the nerve. That seems to last for about 12 months. I've got to have surgery eventually, but when it plays up bad, I can't even pick up a coffee cup with my left hand. My whole arm and hand goes numb for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Jeez.
So I get the injections in my neck. But again, I have to have the operation sooner or later, but I'm putting it off as much as I can. And that's all from bridging as well, believe it or not. All the bridging for, again, like 30 minutes of bridging 3 or 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
It's good. It builds your neck up and gives you the strength, but it's done a lot of damage over the long period.
That's crazy. That's very, very scary. So I was going to ask you, Ken, how do we find your book? How can people order it?
I'm not 100% sure at the moment because my publisher actually went bankrupt last December.
Oh, my.
And there's a lawsuit with them at the moment. So I'm not 100% sure, but that's the book there. I've got about 20 copies at home. So if anyone is interested, just drop me a line through Messenger or on Facebook, and I can post them out.
Okay. I don't know how they would do it, but I know also that Amazon, I think there's a way you can submit it to Amazon. And through Amazon.
It was on Amazon. It was even on Walmart, the Walmart website at one stage. Because I know I've sold about 20 copies in America. I sold copies in England. I've sold copies in Canada. Even in Taiwan, someone found it on a website in Taiwan. So
wow.
So it's around. So, but I'm not, with the legal things at the moment, I'm not 100% sure where I stand. But yeah, so yeah. But I had to change some of the book because I named a lot of people in the book for certain things. There was 2 real big arseholes in Australian wrestling who hated any new guys coming through, and in the book I named them. And when the editor did their final thing, they obviously do a legal check and through the legal people, and they said you can't name them.
Wow.
So I've had to put in there. I've called them asshole 1 and asshole 2.
Well, I'll definitely have to hit you up because I'd love to get a copy of that book for my library. This has been fascinating. Adam, final thoughts. I know you keep cutting out, so I want to make sure I get your thoughts in before the kangaroo karma cuts you out again. Or is he completely frozen?
Yeah, he looks frozen now.
Uh-oh. Now, okay. So while he freezes, he cuts off again. So here's the last thing I'm going to ask you, and we'll wrap it up with this. If you were going to have your own training school, where would you start? How would you organize it to get new wrestlers away from the nonsense that they're doing, but more focus on mat wrestling? How would you organize your training program?
Again, if I had a 2-hour session, the first 30 minutes would be break balls only. And then the second 30 minutes would be holds, counter holds. One thing Roy Heffernan taught me was that every basic hold, like a hammerlock before Nelson, there's 8 different ways of getting out of it. And Roy taught me all 8 ways. Every guy that I have taught, and I've taught many, many guys over the years, they know every way out. That's, again, lacking today. And when I go and offer assistance at wrestling schools today, they're not interested in learning any of those things. Routines, like just simple routines, like 3 arm drags, a hip toss, a drop kick, bang, then settle into a hold. No one does that anymore. No one knows that. So learn all those basics and all those counter holds. Then at the end, then you can do your 15 minutes wrestling each other. But to start off, you must learn all your basics, all your break balls, your basic skills. If you don't have basics, you can't go anywhere.
You can't. This is
No.
very true. Would you ever consider, I know that obviously your physicality is limited these days, but maybe making an instructional video? You can even use 2 other people to kind of demonstrate the techniques, like
Where
your
I'm
entries and stuff like that.
I'm actually trying to get Ken to do that. I just haven't approached him yet, Brian, but thanks for bridging that.
Yeah, because I would love that. I don't want to lose it, and I want to learn it for myself. So it's really out of pure selfishness as a student.
Because I'm hoping that Ken's coming. I'm hoping that Ken comes up to Queensland, because I know that he does jaunt up here occasionally. And if he does, we'll get him out here and I'll get a couple of the boys and we'll go through getting Ken to run us through a bunch of stuff and film it all for posterity.
Yeah, if we could just because I'd like to just take notes. And like I said, just out of pure selfishness, I just want it for myself. But I'm sure other people would want it also. So if we could just use that as a note, Ken, if we could you can just walk a couple people through it just so we could have it on video, because these are things that we can't lose. And really, my time with Billy, the biggest regret that I have is the person that brought him out over the years refused to allow anybody to record it. So we have very little filmed recordings of Billy teaching the specific techniques with clear video and clear instructions, step by step by step. And I know I have friends that took notes and stuff.
We will make it happen.
Please.
Yeah.
Even if I have to go down to Ken. Even if I have to go down to Ken, we'll make it happen.
We got to do that.
Yep.
Any final thoughts for you, Adam, before you cut out on us again?
Yeah, I know. Apologies about the internet, guys. It must be this time of day here with this computer, just where we are. Yeah. Final thoughts. Again, it's always our honour and pleasure to have Ken as Death Roll's patron. It's a personal pleasure to call him a friend. And we are definitely going to get together and film some wrestling shit for posterity in the future. And Ken, keep sending them travel videos and photos, mate. We love it.
Yep. No worries at all.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you for coming on, Ken. It's been a real education and an honor. And please, I'm begging you, just film the videos. We can't lose your knowledge.
Yep. Okay.
So I'm just humbly submit to you. I don't care how we have to do it, but it needs to be done. And like I said, we'll just get 2 people that you could just walk them through, especially the stuff that Roy showed you and different people showed you. If we could just catalog it, this is critical, mission critical. And I think you could help a lot of people, including myself. Again, this is out of pure selfishness and greed.
Yeah.
I need your guidance. So it'd be an honor to
Me too.
Get that recorded and have it.
All right. Okay. Pleasure. No worries at all.
Thanks so much, big fella. Appreciated.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. And with that, we are out of here.